It's been a while since we had one of these talks.
Hey guys, Kiwi here. In this video, I'll be breaking down and analyzing the Walking Dead Season 9 Comic-Con trailer as we discuss Negan being locked up in a jail cell, along with taking a look at the comic book counterpart as we fully discuss what we should expect from him this season. What we discuss from the comics will most likely happen in Season 9 of the TV show, so with all that being said, warning of spoilers for everything in the show up to the Season 8 finale, along with Volume 22 of the comics titled A New Beginning, and let's jump right into this. So, the trailer starts with Rick telling Negan that it's been a while since they've had one of these talks. As Rick explains how their communities have been thriving now more than ever, Negan asks Rick when he'll get to see the pretty picture that Rick is painting for him. Rick responds by asking Negan if he ever gets tired of acting like he's still in charge, which is quite true. That's actually a pretty accurate way of describing Negan in his cell from the comics, and it's good to know that he'll stay the same on the show.
Did you prepare to play Negan differently this year because he's not the leader, he's kind of a prisoner?
I don't know if Negan knows that yet. No,
Now in the comics, Negan's cell is in the basement of an old house at Alexandria. On the show, however, I feel like it would be only right to assume that Negan is taking that cell that Morgan built for Rick way back in Season 6, I believe. Way back when we first saw Morgan building that thing, we knew that it was subtle foreshadowing for this moment with Negan being kept prisoner, and now it's finally come for that to pay off. As the Season 9 trailer starts, we open with Rick walking down that staircase to greet Negan and check up on him. Negan in this cell seems very promising, and I'm excited to watch a whole new side of his character develop as he sits below ground while everyone else thrives above him.
yeah, it's a different year. I think a different side of Negan. I think we've gotten to see some different sides and little hints of different sides, but this year, just from the trailer, we see that he's in a bit of a predicament.
Yeah.
And he's having to face some stuff, I think, internally as well as outside his jail that he's never had to face before. So we're going to see some different sides. And
so next up, Negan has a piece of dialogue that is actually broken in half with a bunch of other stuff in the middle. So he first says, "You think that you have all this on lock," implying that Rick thinks that he has everything on lockdown. Negan continues to say, "When it finally goes to shit, and it will, you make sure you come back and you tell me about that date."
You think you got all this on lock when it finally goes to shit. And it will. Make sure you come back and you tell me all about that date.
So after Negan says that first part about Rick thinking he has everything on lockdown, the trailer actually cuts to all of the inner conflict that we'll be seeing at the beginning of the season. The trailer cuts to a bunch of different clips showing the overall political situation where all the main characters are figuring out how to create a system with rules, laws, and also punishment. In order to recreate civilization, they'll have to get down to the nitty-gritty when it comes to creating fine lines. No gray areas here. If someone does something wrong, they'll have to get a proper punishment depending on what their infraction was. All of this alongside the conflict involving everyone trying to live peacefully with the saviors will no doubt create tension between the communities. I just love how the trailer first has Negan mocking Rick about having everything in control, and then the trailer shows all the political issues that they're dealing with, and then it cuts back to Negan telling Rick to come and let him know the day that everything goes to shit.
But also, you say, I mean, some of his lines, psychologically, he's still just as vindictive as he was with the baseball bat. I mean, I think that he has, certainly in the scenes that we got to play, he's able to get inside Rick like no one else and, you know, worm his way with poison into his ear and say a couple of home truths that no one wants to say, you know, and that's what was so exciting is that, you know, the chess game of these scenes was so much fun to play.
Now when Negan says that second part, is he implying that he'll give Rick advice once shit starts hitting the fan, or is he just telling Rick that his system will fail in general? I believe that this is actually foreshadowing certain situations where Rick might be caught between a rock and a hard spot in his leadership position, and he will actually turn to Negan to hear his perspective on the situation, along with possible advice. So as far as Rick speaking to Negan goes, it does just start out as Rick proving to Negan that his way of ruling is wrong and that Rick is right, that they can successfully live peacefully on their own, just kind of rubbing it in.
What's going on there? What can you tell me about the dynamic now? Because you guys have
Well, I mean, I think there's been a flip-flop, obviously, and he is, Rick Grimes is maybe enjoying his Negan time more than ever. And to get back in this position and see kind of Andy really kind of digging in and having a good time with the Rick Grimes of it all, and me being on the other side of these bars, it's fun. It's fun to, I had a great time just watching him do his thing.
But eventually Rick is sometimes put in a situation where maybe listening to what Negan has to say can actually come in handy, whether Rick wants to admit it or not. Also, during the exclusive comicbook.com interview at Comic-Con this year, Andrew Lincoln discusses that they have an amazing scene together during the second episode of being Rick and Negan, so be sure to look out for that.
What I want to say that this is an amazing new Negan. The scene that we had in the second episode was amazing, and I think some of the writing in it was the best writing that you've had. I think it was beautiful, and just the fact that we've got this history and 2-year time jump as well, I think just informs it in a much more nuanced way. And Jeffrey's just doing some beautiful acting.
There are multiple situations where Negan may actually give Rick advice or help him out in a certain way, and this will begin to paint the path of Negan eventually having some sort of possibility at redemption. I wonder what original ways the show might have Negan become more humanized. They already have a few things that they can take directly from the comics, but I'm interested to see if they add to this list in order to further convince viewers that it is possible for Negan to eventually change and become rehabilitated. So, with Negan in his jail cell for at least half of the season, who else will Negan speak to? Who might he possibly manipulate? JDM says in the SDCC panel that Negan will get to interact with a bunch of characters that he's never had the chance to beforehand, or at least much, so he's really excited for those interactions.
So we're going to see some different sides, and in saying that, Negan's also getting an opportunity to interact with some people that are up on this stage that he hasn't really had a chance to interact with before, which has been, I think, super fun.
Right.
For myself and Negan.
Negan has quite a few interesting conversations in his cell with a handful of different people in the comics, like Rick, Magna's group, and even Carl. Speaking of Carl, let's actually take a moment to discuss what we'll sadly be missing out on now that Carl has been killed off halfway through Season 8. I also wanted to throw in a clip or two from the Comic-Con panel as this gets brought up to Negan's actor, JDM, and he gives quite a hilarious response.
My question's for Jeffrey. In interviews you did for Season 7, you talked about wanting to see your relationship with Carl develop.
Yeah, that worked out.
Yeah, we all know. Yeah, we know that. My question is, how do you feel about how the relationship developed and how it ended?
Abruptly.
Carl and Negan continued developing this special bond between each other, considering their past during the Savior story arc. This is unfortunately unable to happen in the show now due to Carl being killed off, and it's actually one of the major complaints that fans have as far as what we won't be able to see with Carl now that he's been killed off, and we won't see him in the New Beginning after the time skip, because he just became a complete badass in the comics. Now, during the first issue of A New Beginning, at the end of the day, Carl goes down and talks to Negan about things that he can't even speak to his dad about. He starts talking to Negan about a girl that he likes, and then Negan asks him about what his dad had to say about allowing him to go apprentice at the hilltop, as Carl wants to learn how to become a blacksmith. Now, this implies that he told Negan this long before he ever told Rick, and that he's still building up the courage to tell Rick. Negan tells Carl that their talks mean a lot to him, and that they probably keep him sane considering how talkative of a person he is. As Carl walks away, Negan asks him if he still wants to kill him. Carl responds by saying yes, and that he should know this, and then the issue ends. The next issue picks up with Negan saying that this is a surprise and that he wouldn't have asked Carl if he knew the answer already. Carl says sorry, and then he walks up the stairs, and Negan says that he thought that they were friends, and although Negan's always trying to play mind games and manipulate people into siding with him, there's always been a very special type of dynamic between Negan and Carl that it would have worked great on the show if they could have kept up with it. Certain situations like this may be given to other characters, but it would be very difficult to recapture that same dynamic.
I mean, look, there was a whole storyline that Kirkman wrote that I was excited to play, and it didn't pan out that way. So it ended a little bit abruptly, as things do on this show.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes we don't know what's going to happen. It's what keeps us on our toes.
JDM tries explaining that the relationship between Carl and Negan brought out something in both characters that you don't otherwise see. And so although they won't be able to experience the back and forths between Carl and Negan anymore on the show, he still hopes that they find a way to bring out those feelings some other way, although I feel like he was just saying that to give some sort of positive answer. This just continues to go along with what Scott Gimple once said about how although Carl won't be around to fulfill his comic book roles, these story arcs and plot points will still happen, such as everything with Lydia, but they will be remixed around different characters.
There is something, I think that relationship brought out something in both characters that we don't see in any other way, and I hope that we find a way for those kind of feelings to those character traits that Carl brought out in Negan. I hope they're brought out some other way. Does that make sense? Because I think that was a lot in humanizing Negan in particular.
So, the initial reveal was Carl going down to talk to Negan at the end of the first issue of The New Beginning, but will it be Rick or maybe Daryl instead? Will they just cut straight to Rick speaking to him? Now, ever since Season 7, I've actually predicted that Daryl might be the one to walk down and greet Negan for the first time, or at least one of the times. Now, when Carl talks to Negan, their conversation at the end concludes with Negan asking Carl if he still wants to kill him. Carl says yes, and in my opinion, that part of the conversation could be easily translated to Daryl, although it would have to be remixed slightly. Would Daryl even want to visit Negan regularly or at all? I could see it happening maybe once or twice, but I don't really see Daryl visiting Negan in his cell all the time like Carl or Rick might. Adding icing onto the cake, wouldn't it be just the best type of a passive-aggressive revenge if Daryl were to just start playing Easy Street for Negan in his cell? Now, Daryl probably has to stay away from Negan, honestly, because I don't really see him being able to control himself and hold himself back from harming Negan in that cell if he was in the same room as him like Rick is. Regardless of who the first person is to be shown talking to Negan, it will most likely happen at the very end of the Season 9 premiere, considering that Negan was shown at the very end of the first issue of A New Beginning story arc.
I felt like maybe I was kind of stuck in a rut a little bit. You know, like I needed Negan to move on, and we needed to see a different side of him. And you know, be careful what you wish for, because now there is a different side of Negan that is front and center. And I think, you know, Negan is having a hard time with what he is seeing in himself.
Also, I saw a discussion about this on Twitter that piqued my interest, as someone actually suggested that Eugene would be an interesting character to go visit Negan, considering that he's back on Team Family now. With Eugene flip-flopping the past few seasons, along with all the drama that's come with it, will him and Rick actually have made up during the time skip, or is there maybe just still a bit of a rough patch between them? Remember that Rick decided to try and blow up Eugene alongside Negan in the Season 7 finale, only to have his plan fail since the Junkyard people turned on him. Will Negan possibly manipulate Eugene to turn against Team Family once again? We'll just have to wait and see how they actually treat Eugene after the time skip, because if they treat him with all the respect and appreciation that he deserves, then he'll have no reason to listen to Negan's mind games. That being said, if they still underappreciate Eugene and give him a hard time for siding with the Saviors in the first place, Negan may be able to get into Eugene's mind, considering that Negan pampered him so much when he was on his side. Mind you, Eugene only did side with Negan during the war because he wanted to do what he could to keep himself safe, and then he did also end up causing all of Negan's weapons to backfire in the Season 8 finale, so he did totally redeem himself in a way. I'm really curious to see how much Eugene has evolved over the time skip in general. Will he be brought back in line with his comic book counterpart, or will his character continue to diverge in an expanded and evolved way like he did during previous seasons?
You know, they say time heals all wounds. Is there any way this could be the case for Maggie and Negan? Will she ever forgive him for killing?
Yeah. Screw all you people.
Come on.
So moving on, although we may see Negan in his cell for a while, it may not be completely permanent. That being said, I wanted to ask the question, how might Negan put himself in situations where he will be able to prove himself? This may be hard for people to come to terms with, but after we watch the new side of Negan evolve in this prison cell, it's likely for him to have a solid chance of redemption if he goes down the correct path with good behavior, especially if they end up speeding up everything involving Maggie possibly forgiving him if her character is bound to leave the show at some point during season 9.
What do you think, Lauren?
I think it's going to be interesting because I think we all have ideas about what we would do in certain situations and who we want to be and the legacy that we want to leave.
Right.
And when it really comes down to it, what do you do?
Exactly.
So that's what the season's about. See you guys later.
Okay.
Now, as I said previously, in the comics, there's a few instances where he proves that he can be trusted outside of the bars that he's now currently confined in, but they are very few and far between. The first major instance that I wanted to discuss is when his cell door actually gets left open one way or another, and it's up to him to decide what to do with this opportunity. Does he try to escape? Does he get revenge? Or will he just stay put and prove that he can be trusted? Moments like this will no doubt play a large role into Season 9 along with Negan's evolution of a character as a whole. Finally, I wanted to conclude this discussion by bringing up a new group original to this story arc, Magna's group, who actually end up sneaking in and talking to Negan on their own terms. Will he be able to manipulate them, or will everything stay the same as what happened in the comics? Be sure to look out for a Magna Explained video on the channel in the near future, where I'll be fully breaking down Magna's confrontation with Negan from the comics, along with how Magna's group may play out during Season 9 of the show in general. With that all being said, I'd appreciate a like on the video if you've enjoyed anything I've said today, as it really helps me out more than you could imagine. Feel free to subscribe for more Walking Dead content in the near future, and if you'd like to take that extra step in helping support my videos, consider checking out my Patreon as well. There's a bunch of different rewards involving the channel, such as a chance to directly influence the videos being produced, a link in the description. And feel free to follow me on Twitter as well, link also in the description. I'm fairly active on there even when I'm not posting videos, as I'm always retweeting anything and everything I can involving both The Walking Dead and Better Call Saul universe. Anyways guys, as always, I thank you all so much for watching, and until next time, I'll talk to you guys later. Peace out.
Those character traits that Carl brought out in Negan, I hope they're brought out some other way. Does that make sense? Because I think that was a lot in humanizing Negan in particular. Yeah, I don't know what else to say. He's dead, dude.
Solid
tuned.
question.
You know what?